I walked into the city safety center smelling like I'd just crawled out of a dragon's mouth, and judging by the looks on everyone's faces, I probably looked about the same. The air inside the lobby hit me like a metal door to the nose, cold steel, glass, disinfectant so sharp it could cut through bone. And then there was me, dragging in the scent of last night's inferno like an unwanted guest. People stared, whispered. Someone coughed into their sleeve dramatically. Great. News travels fast among firefighters, but it travels even faster among bureaucrats. I tugged at the collar of my soot-stained jacket. The damn thing still radiated heat. My hair, which used to be a respectable brown, now held streaks of ash like I'd decided to reinvent myself as a storm cloud. I could practically hear my chief's voice in my head. Brilliant move, Eli. Truly unparalleled. They'll be teaching your disobedience in training manuals. As if on cue, 2 officers passed me, whispering loud enough to hear. Is that the Omega who? Yeah. The one who ignored protocol. He saved a family though. He broke orders. Same thing. I rolled my eyes. Good morning to you too, I muttered. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with a severe bun and an expression that suggested she survived entirely on contempt, didn't bother hiding her disapproval. You're late, she snapped. I'm early, I corrected, glancing at the digital clock on the wall. 5 minutes early, actually. She narrowed her eyes at me as if that was somehow worse. Director Wells is waiting. Right. Director Marcus Wells, head of city security, Alpha, ex-special forces. A man rumored to have survived explosions by frowning at them. The perfect person to be furious at an Omega firefighter who broke the sacred code of procedure. I followed the receptionist down a long corridor that felt colder than the lobby. Maybe because the walls weren't whispering, they were silent, and silence was never a good sign in this place. Every step echoed too loudly, like the building itself was judging me. You caused quite the stir, the receptionist said without looking back. I saved 3 people. You disobeyed a direct order. Those people would have died. Protocol exists for a reason, and so do brains. She stopped so abruptly I nearly collided with her. If you think sarcasm will help you today, she said, voice dipped in ice. You're mistaken. Oh, don't worry. It rarely helps. I flashed a tired smile. I just enjoy it. Her glare could have melted concrete. We reached the door. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed in black metal, frosted at the edges. The plaque read, Marcus Wells, Director of City Safety. My stomach tightened. I wasn't scared. Just aware. Alpha presence tended to do that, even when I didn't want it to. The receptionist knocked once and pushed the door open. Mr. Wells, the firefighter is here. Which was rude. I have a name. Several actually. But before I could correct her, she left me alone in the doorway. The room was clinical, wide windows overlooking the city, neat rows of screens, a massive metal desk polished enough to use as a mirror. And behind that desk, Marcus Wells looked up. Oh great. Tall. Broad shoulders. A perfectly pressed dark uniform with silver insignia lining the sleeves. Jaw sharp enough to qualify as a weapon. Eyes gray like smoke, cool, assessing, not warm enough to be human. He studied me without blinking. That predator stillness I'd heard rumors about. Eli Rivers, he said, voice low and clipped. Omega, Fire Division. I saluted half-heartedly. Present and excessively smoky. His brow twitched. Not amusement, irritation. You disobeyed an evacuation halt. Yeah, I said. There were people still inside. The structural integrity report said the building was collapsing. And the screaming said otherwise. His jaw flexed. Mine did too, mostly out of spite. You're aware, he continued, that your actions could have resulted in your death? Well, I didn't plan on that part. And yet you proceeded, because someone had to. A pause. A heavy loaded pause. He stood, and wow, yes, he was tall, walking around the desk until he was right in front of me. The scent of cold metal and clean uniform hit first, then he inhaled. My entire body stiffened. Because he didn't just smell the smoke on me, he reacted to it. Sharply. As if the scent wasn't just unpleasant, but familiar. His eyes narrowed slightly, the smallest crack in his otherwise perfect mask. You smell like more than just fire, he said quietly. Thanks? I blinked. I showered. Twice. The smoke's just stubborn. No. He stepped back, expression shuddering. It's not your smoke. A chill ran across my arms. Because he was right. Deep beneath the ashen char on my skin was something else, a faint, unnatural burn. The same one I noticed last night on the walls and rubble. Like smoke with a signature. Smoke that wasn't behaving like smoke. But he shouldn't have been able to smell that. I swallowed. I don't know what you mean. Don't lie, he said. Not threatening, factual. You sensed something at the fire, didn't you? Before I could answer, a siren blared through the building, deep, urgent, unmistakable. The emergency alarm. Marcus grabbed his radio. Location? A voice crackled. Sector 7. Initial spread. Civilians trapped. He turned back to me, gray eyes sharp as a blade. You're coming with me, he said. I blinked. I thought I was suspended. You are, he replied. And judging by your record, suspension clearly won't stop you from interfering. He grabbed his gear from the wall. So, he said, already moving toward the door, you're riding with me. If you're going to break rules, Rivers? He glanced over his shoulder, a spark of challenge in his gaze. I want to see exactly how you do it. And just like that, I was running after him. Straight into another fire. Marcus's SUV roared through the streets like it had personal grudges against every pothole in the city. I gripped the door handle as we barreled towards Sector 7, lights cutting through the early morning gloom. The cab smelled like leather, cold air conditioning, and that sharp metallic scent Marcus always carried. The kind that reminded me of weapons and discipline. He glanced at me once, then twice, then let out a breath through his nose. You didn't answer me yesterday. About what? I replied, pretending to fix the strap on my gear. Why you broke a direct order. I shot him a look. I heard screaming. That's not a justification. It is if the alternative is letting people die, I snapped, then paused. What would you have done? If you'd heard that kid shouting for his mother? He didn't answer immediately, which, for Marcus, meant he heard me. Not agreed, not approved, but heard. His jaw tightened. Protocol exists. Yeah, to protect us from ourselves. Heard that one before. His hands tightened on the wheel. You can't save everyone by improvising. Maybe. But I can save someone. Silence. Heavy, but not hostile. More like he was thinking through something he didn't like thinking through. The SUV screeched as we turned into the old shifter district. Low brick buildings, narrow alleys, laundry hanging from balconies. And ahead of us, a 3-story complex. Engulfed in flames, the fire spreading with unnatural speed, like it wanted to consume everything. I unbuckled before we even stopped. I didn't say go, Marcus warned. You also didn't say stay. I was out the door. Fire crews were already on site, hoses blasting pressurized foam, medics pulling families out to the curb. Heat pressed against me before I even reached the building, thick, suffocating, pulsing like a heartbeat. And beneath it, under the smoke and ash, there it was again. That same strange scent from last night. A chemical tang layered over natural burn. A sharp spiced undertone, distinctly alpha. I shivered. No ordinary fire smelled like that. Marcus jogged up beside me, eyes scanning the chaos. Do not disappear on me, he said sharply. Relax, I shot back. You'll know where I am. I'm the one who smells like barbecue. He exhaled. Long and controlled. Go. I didn't need more permission. Inside, the building was collapsing by the minute. Flames crawled over the ceiling, hissing down the stairwell. But the layout was simple enough. I ducked under a broken beam, and jogged up what was left of the main staircase. Anyone inside? I shouted. A voice echoed faintly from the second floor. A child. Gotcha. I pushed deeper through the heat. Smoke curled around my neck, trying to claw its way into my lungs, but I'd done this enough times to pace my breathing. Halfway across the hall, something groaned overhead. I looked up just in time to see a ceiling beam crack. Oh, come on. Before I could dodge, a hand grabbed my jacket and yanked me sideways with surprising force. The beam smashed to the ground exactly where I'd been standing. I hit the floor, breath knocked out. Marcus hovered over me, his expression tight. Are you insane? He barked. Apparently, I wheezed. Thanks. He helped me up, firm, steady, and it hit me again how strong he was. Not just alpha strong. Trained strong. Efficient. I told you not to disappear. And I told you I don't listen, I said. There's a kid. I pointed to the far room. Marcus didn't argue. He simply nodded. That tiny gesture, that tiny moment of agreement, shocked me more than almost getting crushed. We moved together, weirdly in sync for two people who argued about everything. I kicked the door open. Inside, a small boy curled behind a fallen dresser, coughing and terrified. The smell was worse here, thick with that unnatural edge, as if whoever set the fire stood right where I was. "Hey buddy," I called, crouching low. "Let's get you out." He lifted his head. Eyes wide. Too much smoke already in his lungs. I scooped him up in one motion. A wall of flame burst across the hallway behind us. Marcus cursed. "Back way. Move." We sprinted down a narrow service corridor just as the main wall collapsed with a deafening roar. Embers exploded around us like fiery snow. Outside, firefighters rushed to take the boy, medics pulling us both out of the blast radius. I finally caught my breath, and then I smelled it again. That scent. Strong, wrong. Older than the fire. I stared at the burning structure. "This isn't just a fire," I said, voice low. "Someone was here before us." Marcus didn't respond. And that silence. That tight, clipped silence. Said more than any words he could have given me. The next morning, the city safety auditorium buzzed like a kicked hornet's nest. Officers packed the room in stiff uniforms, datapads in hand, eyes fixed on the central dais, where Marcus Wells stood like a storm cloud in human form. I lingered at the back, half hidden behind taller alphas. Technically, I wasn't required at these briefings. But after last night's inferno, I was too wired to stay home, and too curious to skip. Hearing how the city intended to explain a fire that practically sprinted up the walls. Besides, the gossip alone was worth the trip. "That's him," someone whispered behind me. "Yeah. The Omega who got dragged along by the director yesterday. He survived 2 collapses in 1 week? Idiot or lucky? Probably both. They weren't wrong." Marcus raised a hand, and the room fell dead silent. "Sector 7, he began, voice icy enough to freeze the projector screens, was an avoidable disaster. The response time was too slow. Communication failures, misreported structural scans." His gaze sliced through the officers like a blade. "If this pattern continues, people will die." The temperature in the room felt like it dropped 10 degrees. The chiefs shifted uncomfortably. A few tried to explain, but Marcus cut them off with a gesture sharp enough to draw blood. "Excuses," he said, "not solutions." Someone near the front cleared his throat. "Sir, if initial data suggested—" Marcus's stare silenced him instantly. I winced in sympathy. A little. Then, in the middle of a particularly brutal breakdown of last night's missteps, the briefing officer approached Marcus and whispered something in his ear. Marcus's gaze snapped to me. Oh no. Every head in the room turned as he said, "Rivers. Inside. Now." Fantastic. My favorite words. I followed him to his office under an avalanche of whispers. His office was exactly as I remembered it, cold metal surfaces, hard lines, and a faint, sterile scent that always seemed at war with whatever hint of smoke stuck to me. Today, the two smells clashed aggressively. Marcus stood by the window, arms folded. He didn't sit. Not a good sign. Close the door. Another bad sign. I obeyed. He didn't turn around when he spoke. "Tell me what you sensed at the fire." No greeting. No preamble. Just straight to the interrogation. I blew out a slow breath. "Sensed? That's the word we're going with?" His voice dropped half an octave. "Rivers. Right. I raised my hands. "Look, I don't know what you're expecting me to say. I expect the truth." He turned, finally, and the intensity of his stare nearly rooted me to the floor. So I said the thing no one else in the city could have said. I smelled it again. Something flickered in his expression. "The same scent," I continued. "From the first fire. And last night. It's identical." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Describe it." I hesitated. Because describing it made it real. "It's layered," I said slowly. "Not like normal smoke. It's chemical, sharp, almost metallic. And there's something else in it. Something biological." His eyes sharpened. "Biological?" "Yeah. Like..." I swallowed. "Like the scent of an alpha. It's faint, but it's there. And it's the same alpha every time." Silence fell between us, heavy, dense, dangerous. Marcus didn't move. But something leaked through the cracks of his iron composure. A brief, sharp inhale, a twitch in his throat, the way his shoulders stiffened. He felt it too. He recognized it. And for a moment, I forgot to breathe. "You're certain?" he asked. The words were steady. The voice behind them wasn't. Yes, I said. I'm an Omega in a fire zone. If there's a scent to track, I'll pick it up. He looked away, staring past me at some point only he could see. I took a step closer. Marcus, do you know something about this? His expression slammed shut instantly. Steel shutters behind gray eyes. The investigation is ongoing, he said, defaulting to protocol like armor. Your impressions will be evaluated and forwarded to the analytics division. Impressions? I repeated. You sound like I'm reporting the weather. That's how data works. Funny, because your voice shook when I said the word scent. His head snapped toward me. Too fast, too sharp. It did not. It did, I said softly. We stood there, locked in a silence that wasn't hostile but wasn't safe either. Something crackled in the air. Not heat, not tension, but recognition. A shared awareness neither of us wanted to acknowledge. Marcus cleared his throat, straightened his shoulders, and moved behind his desk as if distance could erase what just happened. We're done, he said. Return to your station? Sure, I replied, turning toward the door. But you should know something. He didn't ask what. Maybe he didn't want to. I answered anyway. That scent? It's not random, it's intentional. Like a signature. A beat. Whoever's doing this, they want someone to notice. I opened the door. And I think you already have. As I stepped into the hallway, one thought settled heavy and certain in my chest. Marcus Wells was hiding something. Something that smelled like smoke. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. High ceilings. Dark wood. A long crescent table raised just enough that anyone standing below felt smaller. And the 7 counselors sitting behind it. A row of impeccably dressed vultures, ready to feed. Marcus stood alone in the center of the room. Hands clasped behind his back, posture straight as a spear. I wasn't in the chamber, I wasn't high-ranking enough. But rumor spreads fast, and the glass walls of the hallway let me catch glimpses between passing officers. Director Wells, Counselor Hale began. Voice smooth as polished marble. Your department has failed to contain the rising incidents in the shifter districts. 3 major fires in a week, Counselor Lee added. 2 with casualties. And 1 nearly resulted in the loss of your companion. The pause before the last word dripped with judgment. Marcus didn't blink. My companion is a firefighter. And a damn good one. The chamber shifted. A collective intake of breath. Marcus Wells did not hand out compliments. Certainly not about Omegas. Then a new voice entered the fray. Counselor Garrett. If arrogance had a scent, he'd leave a trail for miles. Tall, silver-haired, with a smile sharp enough to bleed someone dry, and not lose composure over it. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. You know, Garrett said lightly. When I heard you'd taken an Omega onto an active investigation, I thought it was a joke. His eyes gleamed with passive-aggressive curiosity, but it appears you were serious. Marcus didn't move. Firefighter Rivers saved multiple civilians. His presence was necessary. Necessary? Garrett echoed with a soft laugh. Director Omegas are trained to follow orders, not sniff around critical operations like hunting dogs. A muscle in Marcus's cheek twitched. It was the smallest reaction, but I saw it, even from the hall. Rivers is trained, Marcus said evenly, to keep people alive, something your commentary does not help with. The room froze. Garrett tilted his head. Is that supposed to be a defense? Or an excuse for your department's failures? No, Marcus replied, voice glacier cold. It is a statement of fact. Another shuffle. Another round of shocked glances. Garrett's pleasant facade cracked for half a second, irritation tightening the corners of his mouth. You're becoming dangerously sentimental, Wells, he said softly. You place too much trust in those who are bred to obey. Marcus stepped forward just a fraction, but it felt like the floor shifted beneath him. You mistake obedience, he said, for capability. Rivers has more field intuition than half the teams you've approved this year. That earned several raised eyebrows. And Garrett's full poisonous attention. How touching. Garrett's smile returned, thinner. Let's hope your pet project doesn't get someone else killed. I won't discuss personnel like that, Marcus said sharply. And I won't tolerate your phrasing. There it was. A shield. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just firm. Unshakable. It was the closest thing to true anger I'd ever seen from him. The council droned on with statistics and accusations, but the real battle had already happened. Marcus standing between Garrett's venom and me. Not because I was special, but because he refused to let prejudice dictate policy. Eventually, the session adjourned. Counselors filed out in a cloud of expensive cologne and self-importance. I pretended to be very busy studying a wall chart as they passed. Then Garrett emerged. He walked with the smooth confidence of someone who believed the world existed to applaud him. As he swept by me, a faint scent clung to the air behind him. Barely there, buried under expensive aftershave. But I caught it. Of course I did. That smoke. Faint. Thin. Like a whisper at the back of my skull. The same unnatural burn from the fires. My breath hitched, just slightly. Garrett didn't look at me, but the corner of his mouth curled upward, almost imperceptibly. Like he knew I smelled it. Like he was waiting for someone to, a trail no one else could sense. But I could. And suddenly, the chill crawling up my spine wasn't from the air conditioning. The fire started before the alarms did. Marcus and I were halfway across the industrial district when it hit me. A blast of scent so sharp my lungs seized up. Not the smell of a burning warehouse. Not the smoke of chemicals or fuel. The signature. That same unnatural burn. Alive. Present. Close. Stop the car, I said, gripping the dashboard. Marcus braked so hard my helmet slid off the seat. What is it? He demanded. I swallowed, pulse kicking up. He's near. Whoever's been setting these fires, he's close. I can smell him. Marcus didn't question it. Didn't hesitate. He grabbed the radio. Dispatch, confirm location of the new incident. Before the operator could respond, a column of fire bloomed ahead of us like a monstrous flower. Sector 11, Marcus muttered. Damn it. We were out of the SUV before it fully stopped. The industrial zone burned differently than homes or apartment blocks. These buildings were metal and concrete, but the fire ate through them like paper. Flames spilled out of shattered windows, curling up steel walls with a hunger that felt almost sentient. Fire crews were already scrambling into position, shouting over sirens and exploding pipes. But I wasn't looking at the fire. I was looking at him. A figure. Tall, hooded, darting behind a storage crate at the far edge of the lot. Too calm. Too deliberate. Marcus, I started. I see him, he said, voice taut. He didn't tell me to stay put. He didn't remind me of protocol. He didn't block me. He just nodded once. Go. And we ran. The air in the alleys behind the warehouse was thick with smoke, rolling along the ground like fog. I followed the scent, sharp, spiced, unmistakable, as it trailed around corners. My lungs burned. My legs ached. But I knew this trail. It called to me, pulling me forward like a thread wrapped around my ribs. There. I pointed. The figure vaulted over a chain-link fence with movements too fast, too smooth. Marcus cursed and followed, climbing after me. We landed in a narrow service yard, littered with pipes and broken pallets. The figure glanced back once, and it wasn't a normal glance. It lingered. Interested. Almost familiar. Then he sprinted into a maze of back alleys. We followed, weaving through shadows and smoke, the world shrinking. Into pounding feet, harsh breaths, and that scent dragging me onward. At the edge of the district, Marcus shouted, "Left!" I turned left. Too late. A forklift, abandoned and half-collapsed, suddenly shifted from the heat. Metal screeched. A wall of smoke blasted outward like a wave. I staggered, vision flashing. The figure disappeared into the haze. I fell to one knee, coughing hard as the smoke clawed down my throat. Eli. Marcus grabbed my arm, pulling me upright. Stay with me. I'm fine, I lied. Then promptly nearly collapsed again. Marcus caught me before I hit the ground. For someone who hated physical contact, he didn't let go, not until he was sure I was breathing. We lost him, I rasped. Maybe not, he pointed. Caught on a jagged piece of metal fencing was a torn scrap of fabric. Dark, thick, almost like part of a uniform. And stitched into the corner. A symbol. Circular. Silver. The sigil of the city council's enforcement division. My blood ran cold. Marcus took the piece carefully, jaw clenched. This was no civilian. He didn't say the rest. He didn't need to. Someone inside the council was playing with fire. My knees buckled again, and Marcus swore. That's it. Hospital, now. I tried to protest. But the world tilted and my lungs burned like open wounds. Next thing I knew, I was in the passenger seat of the SUV fighting nausea. while Marcus drove like the city owed him a personal escort lane. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and overworked medics. A doctor fussed over me while Marcus stood in the corner, arms crossed, looking like he wanted to punch the air itself. When the doctor finally left, Marcus stepped closer. "You scared the hell out of me." I blinked up at him. "Didn't know you had hell to scare out." A twitch at the corner of his mouth, not a smile but something adjacent. "You feel things," he said quietly. "More than any scanner, any device, any expert." "That's what Omegas do," I replied. "We're wired different." "No." His voice dropped lower. "You're wired better." Heat climbed up my neck before I could stop it. I held his gaze. "And you're wired too, aren't you?" He didn't flinch. "You smelled it," I said. "The same signature. The same alpha." Silence stretched. Marcus turned away. "I'll update the case file," he said. "Get some rest." And he left before I could ask the question that burned hotter than the fire. What did he recognize in that scent? And why was he afraid to say it? Marcus's office felt different that evening. Not colder. Quieter. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath. He'd called me in after my mandatory rest. No lecture about disobeying doctors, no clipped remarks about protocol. Just a simple, "We need to talk," which was already alarming enough. When I stepped inside, he was standing with his back to me, staring at the city through the tall windows. The skyline was washed in neon and fading sunlight, the industrial district still coughing up thin ribbons of smoke. He didn't turn when he spoke. "Close the door." I did. A beat of silence stretched, long and taut. Then he said, "I want you to come with me." "Where?" "To the archives." His voice was low, steady. Too steady. "There's something you should hear. Not protocol. Not your report. Something I should hear." That, alone, tightened something in my chest. Krotov Archives, 20 minutes later. The underground archives were a labyrinth of metal shelves, dim lighting, and the subtle hum of ancient ventilation systems. Each step echoed. The kind of echo that made secrets feel heavier. Marcus led the way, swiping his badge through multiple restricted doors, until we reached a narrow corridor lined with soundproof rooms. Inside one of them, a single glass wall overlooked a long bank of encrypted files and dusty personnel logs. It also overlooked, unknowingly, the hallway. Because that's where I heard it. 2 voices. 2 men. Marcus froze when he recognized one of them. I didn't know who the second man was, but he carried the weight of a soldier, broad, scarred, voice weathered by sand and loss. "You shouldn't hide this," the man said. "If the same signature is appearing again, he's alive." Marcus didn't respond, but his shoulders tensed. "He was your partner, Marcus, your friend. We all thought he died in that fire." A pause. "And Garrett let us believe it." I inhaled sharply. This wasn't meant for me to hear. But the words hung heavy and unmistakable. Partner. Fire. Garrett. The soldier continued, voice rough. "You keep blaming yourself for that night, but we both know the truth. He disobeyed the mission because the civilians were still inside. You tried to get him out and Garrett refused you backup." A sharp sting hit my chest. Marcus had been in my position once. Disobedient. Driven by instinct. Punished for choosing lives over rules. My throat tightened. The soldier spoke again, softer this time. "The scent you're tracking. You really think it's him?" Marcus's voice finally came, so quiet it almost didn't exist. "I don't know." But he did know. I could feel it in the way he said the words. A heartbeat later, the soldier left. Marcus remained rooted to the floor. I stepped closer, and he turned toward me, expression defenseless for the first time since I met him. His eyes weren't cold steel tonight. They were smoke. The painful kind. "You heard," he said. I nodded. He didn't try to deny it. Didn't put up walls. Didn't hide behind ranks or orders. Instead, he exhaled slowly. "Years ago," he said, "my unit responded to an attack in the old district. My partner, Darren, broke formation to rescue a family. I went in after him. A structural collapse trapped him inside." "And Garrett?" I asked quietly. "He ordered us to pull back." Marcus's voice tightened. Said the risk was too high. I begged for 5 minutes. He refused. The guilt in his voice hit harder than any fire alarm. "And the scent?" I whispered. Marcus looked away. "Darren was an alpha," he said. "His scent was strong. Unique." A hollow pause. "It's the same signature you've been tracking." My pulse stumbled. "So, he's alive?" His jaw clenched. Or someone wants us to think so. Silence swallowed us both. Then, unexpectedly, Marcus stepped closer. Not dominating. Not commanding. Just closer. Rivers, he said, tone different now. If Garrett is involved, we're being watched. Maybe followed. Maybe set up. I swallowed. By who? I don't know. He met my eyes, voice steady but softer than I'd ever heard it. Which is why I need you close today. If the surveillance taps are still active, someone might move. For once, there was no order in his voice, just trust. Or something dangerously close to it. I nodded. I'm with you, I said. Marcus held my gaze a moment longer, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Good, he murmured. Stay beside me. Whatever happens. And as we left the archives together, the smoke drifting over the city tasted different. Not just like danger. Like a past Marcus couldn't outrun. And a future I was now tangled in. By the time we reached the council warehouse, the sky was already on fire. Orange light bled into the low clouds, turning the whole district into a warped sunset. The building itself was a monolith of reinforced concrete and steel, set apart from the others like it thought it was too important to mingle with regular infrastructure. Tonight, it was a torch. Flames punched out of broken windows in violent bursts. Smoke rolled upward in thick dark waves, swallowing the stars. I stepped out of the SUV and nearly staggered. The scent hit me like a blow. Not just burning insulation and melted plastic. Not just scorched paper and fuel. The signature. Sharp. Spiced. Familiar now in a way that felt wrong. He was here. Eli? Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. Talk to me. He's inside, I said. The one who set the other fires. He's not just passing through this time. He is this fire. Marcus didn't question it. Didn't demand proof. He just nodded. Jaw set. Teams Beta and Gamma, perimeter. Delta, on suppression. Alpha team with me. His gaze slid back to me. Rivers, you're on point for scent. Some part of me wanted to smile at that. You're on point for scent was his way of saying I trust you more than our equipment. The rest of me was too busy feeling like my bones were vibrating. Council building, I said, eyeing the crumbling walls. There'll be internal security systems, server rooms, documents. Marcus gave a humorless huff. Not if this blaze has anything to say about it. The fire crackled louder, as if it heard him. We went in through a side entrance the crews had partially cooled. Heat blasted over us like a physical force the second we crossed the threshold. The air inside shimmered, thick with smoke and fury. My mask dampened the worst of it, but I could still taste the signature under everything. That same alpha scent, woven into the timing of the explosions, the pacing of the flames. He wasn't just burning things, he was writing with fire. We moved fast. Office doors hung crooked, papers scattered across the floor, some already curled black at the edges. Sprinklers had either failed or been sabotaged, they spat only occasional useless drips. Servers? I shouted over the roar. Sublevel, Marcus replied. If any record survived, it'll be there. Or someone made sure it didn't. The hall trembled as a section of ceiling gave way behind us, sending sparks and flaming debris down like a meteor shower. We dropped, covering our helmets with our arms. Heat licked at my gear, greedy and relentless. Still alive? Marcus called. Give me a second, I muttered, pushing up. Yeah. Unfortunately. He snorted. Move. We pressed forward, following the emergency lighting, a staccato pulse of red along the walls. The deeper we went, the stranger the fire felt. It wasn't random. It wasn't wild. It was directed. A corridor ahead of us remained suspiciously clear, like the blaze had been held back there on purpose. Smell anything? Marcus asked. Yeah, I said, my chest tightening. Him. Stronger. Good. His voice was calm. We're close. I wished I could share that enthusiasm. We reached the reinforced door to the sublevel, and Marcus keyed in an override code. The lock clicked, then jammed halfway down. Of course. I got it, I said, jamming my shoulder against the door. On 3? He joined me without argument. 3. We shoved. The door groaned, then finally gave way, the metal hot under my gloves. The sublevel hallway was a tunnel of concrete, the fire less visible but more insidious, smoke pooling low, heat radiating from cracks in the ceiling. Sparks drifted like angry stars. The servers are down here, Marcus said. Garrett's pet archive. Financials, contracts, private communications. Convenient place for an accident. Too convenient. We reached the server room. Or what used to be the server room. Racks were scorched, some already collapsed. But not everything had burned. There were gaps where fire had hesitated, licked the edges, then moved on. Like someone had pulled it back. In the center of the room, a row of cabinets still stood. The metal doors were warped but not melted through. "Help me," Marcus said. We yanked one open. Inside, charred folders and half-burned drives sat in disarray. "Grab what you can," he ordered. "Anything with council seals or enforcement stamps." We shoveled documents and hard drives into fireproof bags while the building groaned around us. Every second felt like it stretched and snapped. Then the scent hit me like a slap. Close. Immediate. I froze. "Marcus." He straightened, eyes narrowing. "What is it?" "He's here," I whispered. "Not just his trail. Him." A shadow moved in the smoke at the far end of the room, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like tactical gear. Hood up. Face obscured by a mask. But the way he stood, the way his weight shifted, balanced like a fighter, the way the fire responded, flaring brighter around him like it was drawn to his presence. This wasn't just a man near a blaze. He was connected to it. Marcus took a step forward. "Darren?" The name hung in the air, raw and hopeful and horrified all at once. The figure turned slightly, just enough that I caught the glint of eyes through the haze, not normal eyes. There was something wild there. Unfocused. A man running on memory and instinct instead of reason. He didn't answer. But the fire did. Flames along the ceiling surged, rolling toward us in a searing wave. "Move!" I yelled, grabbing Marcus and hauling him toward the door as a section of the upper structure gave way. Metal screamed. A beam crashed between us and the shadowed figure, sparks exploding like a wall of stars. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw him lift a hand, not in aggression. In something like recognition. Then the tunnel behind him collapsed and he was gone. We stumbled back into the hall as the building shuddered violently. "Structural collapse in progress." Someone shouted over the comms. "All teams, fall back." The world narrowed to heat, noise, and motion. A chunk of ceiling blew out near the stairwell, forcing us down a side corridor neither of us had intended to take. "Tunnels," Marcus panted. "Old maintenance routes. They connect to the south exit. Any of them not buried?" "We're about to find out." The maintenance tunnel was a low, cramped artery under the warehouse. Smoke crawled along the ceiling, and somewhere above us the building wailed as if alive, beams breaking like bones. My legs shook. My lungs burned. But the evidence bag in my hand felt heavier than my gear. It wasn't just paper and plastic. It was leverage. It was proof. We clambered over a partial cave-in, Marcus going first, then reaching back to pull me up. His grip was solid, grounding. Somewhere between the falling debris and the suffocating heat, the fear in my chest shifted. I wasn't just afraid of dying. I was afraid of leaving this with him. The guilt, the past, the ghosts he couldn't outrun. We pushed through a final blocked section where part of the tunnel roof had collapsed. Sunlight bled through cracks in the rubble. A promise. Marcus braced himself and shouldered a broken support aside. It shifted with a grinding groan. "On 3, he said. Voice hoarse. 1, 2, 3, I finished, throwing my weight against the debris with him. It moved just enough to open a gap. We squeezed through, emerging behind the warehouse into blinding brightness. And a chaos of yelling, sirens and wind carrying the heat away. Hands grabbed us, pulling us fully clear. Medics swarmed. Firefighters shouted. Security officers rushed forward. Marcus didn't let go of my arm until he was sure I was upright. Then he thrust the evidence bag at the nearest security captain. "Chain of custody," he rasped. "These go straight to internal affairs and nowhere else. Logged, copied, triple backed up. Now." The captain, wide-eyed, nodded. "Ah, yes, sir." I leaned on a stretcher, coughing, watching the council's proud warehouse sag and crumble, flames devouring the last of its secrets. Not all of them, though. Some of them were now in a fireproof bag. Some were in Marcus's haunted eyes. And some sat in the space where a man named Darren had stood inside the blaze, alive when he should have been dead. Marcus came to stand beside me, shoulders brushing mine. "You saw him," I said quietly. "Yes. It was him." A long pause. Yes. The honesty hurt more than any lie would have. I swallowed, tasting ash and something sharp, like regret. Then Garrett didn't just let him burn. He turned him into this. Marcus's jaw clenched. "We're not done," he said. "Not to me. Not to the fire. To himself." I looked at the collapsing warehouse, then at the evidence being carried away. "For what it's worth," I murmured, "we got something out before it all went down." His gaze softened. "Just a fraction." "We did," he agreed. "We will again." And as the flames roared their final defiance into the sky, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Being next to Marcus Wells meant walking straight into the fire. But for the first time, burning felt a little like living. The council chamber was colder than usual. Not physically, the temperature control remained perfectly calibrated. As always. But in the way everyone avoided looking at one another. News of the warehouse collapse had spread through the upper floors like a shockwave. The council had demanded an urgent clarification. What they got instead was a reckoning. I stood beside Marcus, evidence bag sealed and logged, the weight of truth simmering like a fresh burn. Officers clustered around the chamber's perimeter. A few analysts from internal affairs set up hollow screens showing the recovered documents, half-scorched but damning. Financial diversions. Unreported construction bids. Forced relocation proposals. And communications signed, discreetly yet undeniably, by Counselor Garrett. Garrett walked in late, as if he were arriving to a gala rather than an interrogation. Perfect suit. Perfect posture. Perfect thin smile. "Director Wells," he said lightly, "I hear your department had quite a night." Marcus didn't respond. He simply nodded to internal affairs. The screens lit up. Line after line of incriminating files scrolled across the hollow display. Project outlines, encrypted instructions. And most importantly, authorization for controlled burns to accelerate redevelopment clearance. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Someone cursed under their breath. A councilwoman stood abruptly, chair scraping. Garrett didn't flinch. Instead he laughed. A soft, amused exhale. "Really, Marcus? You're going to accuse me of orchestrating wildfires, based on scraps you dragged out of a smoking ruin?" Marcus stepped forward. "Not scraps. Evidence. And so convenient," Garrett continued, "that your favorite little Omega happened to be right at the center of every discovery." The jab landed like a slap. I felt heat rise in my chest. Anger, not fire-related this time. But Marcus didn't react outwardly. He only gestured to the officers. "Bring him in." 2 security teams entered, guiding a man between them, tall, broad, soot-stained. His tactical gear was charred, mask removed. His face. I sucked in a breath. He looked like Marcus, not in features, in posture, in the way a soldier breaks and still stands. His eyes were blank with shock, or memory, or guilt. Darren. The lost partner. The dead man. The source of the signature. Garrett's mask slipped for the first time. His lips thinned. His gaze sharpened. "Darren Cooper," Marcus said, voice steady. "Missing in action for 3 years. Confirmed dead per council records." Darren's voice was gravel. Uncertain. "I wasn't dead. Garrett found me, he said. He said I'd been abandoned. That you left me to burn." Marcus inhaled sharply, the smallest betrayal of emotion. Garrett tisked. "A wounded man. A perfect tool. A tragic weapon. And you, Marcus, were too sentimental to cut him loose. I simply repurposed the waste." Every officer in the room shifted. Some in disgust, some in shock, all in readiness. Marcus stepped closer, voice low but lethal. "You used him. You turned him into a weapon. You burned families out of their homes to make room for development deals." Garrett's smile returned, sharp and poisonous. "Progress requires sacrifice. The city will thank me eventually." He glanced at me then. Dismissively, cruelly. "And you," he added, "you think he saved you? Wells doesn't value you. He merely replaced one disobedient subordinate with a more obedient Omega." My body went still. So did Marcus. Then Marcus turned fully toward him, and said with the clearest, sharpest conviction I'd ever heard from him, "He's not obedient. And he never will be." The chamber froze. Garrett's smile faltered. Officers stepped in. Cuffs clicked. The counselor who'd orchestrated a citywide nightmare was finally dragged away. And for the first time, I felt the entire council truly looking at Marcus, and at me, with something dangerously close to respect. Or fear. Either worked for me. 3 days after Garrett's arrest, the city smelled different. Not like burning plastic. Not like scorched brick. Not like fear. For the first time in weeks, the air over Hollow Bay carried nothing more than evening warmth and the distant salt of the coastline. I was still half convinced it was a hallucination. The fires had stopped, abruptly, completely. Darren was in protective custody, slowly piecing his mind together. Internal Affairs cleared Marcus of all wrongdoing, and the council, well, they were too busy salvaging their reputations to bother him now. And me? I got promoted. Turns out we need someone who can smell trouble translated into a shiny new badge, Special Unit for Smoke Pattern Analysis, a department that didn't exist until yesterday. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt weird, changed, burned clean and raw. Which is probably why I let Marcus drag me to the rooftop of the city safety center after sunset, 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. The city sprawled beneath us. Neon lights blinking awake, windows glowing warm gold. The smokestacks in the distance, looking almost peaceful, with nothing left to burn. Marcus handed me a cup. "I thought you didn't drink coffee after 5, I said. "I don't," he replied. "This is tea." "Since when do you drink tea?" "Since you complained I'm too tightly wound." I choked on my laughter. "I said you look tightly wound. That's different." He gave me a side eye. "Not by much." We stood shoulder to shoulder at the railing, sipping in comfortable silence. The wind tossed my hair around, stubbornly carrying the faint lingering scent of smoke. Marcus glanced at me. "How's the new unit treating you?" I shrugged. "I have an office, and a desk, and a plant I'm expected to keep alive. Troubling. Extremely." I gave it 3 days. His exhale was very close to a laugh, the real thing, not the humorless huff he usually substituted for one. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. That was new. And it hit warmer than the tea. "Well," I replied lightly, "you did technically save my life 5 times, so I guess you're partially responsible." I counted 3. I counted 5. "You're wrong. You're stubborn. You are too..." We stared at each other for a long second, the city humming gently below us. Then I smirked. "Speaking of stubborn, are you rewriting your 10 rules of discipline? Or should I submit my edits through the proper chain of command?" He lifted an eyebrow. "Which edits?" "Oh, you know." I sipped my tea dramatically. Rule 1. Never assume an Omega will listen. Marcus leaned one hip against the railing, facing me fully now. "Incorrect." I blinked. "Incorrect?" He nodded once, solemn as a priest. "The correct Rule 1, he said, is, don't argue with me on rooftops." I snorted so hard I nearly spilled my drink. "Why rooftops?" He stepped closer, subtle, but enough that I felt the warmth of him, even in the breeze. "Because," he said softly, "it's dangerous up here." My breath caught. Not from fear. We stood there, a whisper of space between us, the city lights painting gold across his face. His eyes weren't cold tonight, just steady. Warm in a way I never expected him to be capable of. "Eli," he said, voice low, "thank you, for trusting me, for staying, for everything." "I didn't exactly have a choice," I teased, though my voice came out softer than intended. "You keep dragging me into fires. And you keep walking into them with me." A pause. A good pause. The kind where the smoke finally clears. I looked out over the city again. Its lights, its sounds, its fragile peace returning at last. The wind carried the faintest hint of burnt wood through my hair. A residue of weeks spent running toward flames instead of away from them. I smiled to myself. The smell of smoke is still in my hair. But for the first time it isn't about fear. It's about everything we survived. Everything we survived. I turned back to Marcus, and he was already looking at me. Maybe the city was finally quiet. Maybe the fires were done burning. But something new, something warm, had just begun.